The landing lights of the transport shuttle cut through the snowstorm that never stops on Solara Ix. Captain Arlen Drax, who was 36 years old and had a face that looked like it had been through too many star systems and come back to too few, led the huge ship to Docking Bay 11. His daughter Leora was next to him, and her breath fogged up the clear steel of the reinforced viewport. "Daddy, it looks like a huge palace made of sugar," Leora yelled, her 7-year-old excitement overflowing after a 16-hour trip from the outer mining facility. Arlen smiled tiredly. "Not sugar, my love. More like ice that could freeze you solid in less than 30 seconds. The shuttle landed with a soft thud, and its landing struts sank into the thick snow. For the past 4 years, Arlen had been moving goods between frontier colonies. His wife Celine died in a reactor explosion on Titan Outpost. It was just the two of them against the whole universe. A solar flare had already delayed their delivery to the research station tonight by breaking their navigation systems. He told Leora to bundle up and helped her into a thermal suit, checking each seal twice. Solara Ix's midnight temperatures could drop to minus 110 degrees, even with heated walkways. Their suits were top of the line and could keep their body temperature stable for 6 hours in very bad weather. Arlen had spent almost 3 months' worth of pay on them, but credits didn't mean anything to Leora's safety. They stepped outside into the howling wind, with Arlen holding her hand tightly. The lights at the research station looked like beacons in the white. Biodomes sparkled around them, protecting the farming areas. Arlen's meeting with Dr. Raven had gone on longer than expected. The man loved to talk about quantum logistics rules for hours on end. Leora suddenly stopped near the main square, where a statue of the first governor of the colony stood guard. "Wait, Daddy," she said quickly, over the suit comes. Arlen saw a person near the frozen fountain through the falling snow. At first, he thought it was trash from the storm, but the shape changed. His hand instinctively went to the plasma sidearm at his hip. He calmed down and realized the creature wasn't trying to hurt him. He took a deep breath as they got closer. A dragon. Not the huge war beasts from the Draconian War decades ago, but a smaller, younger one. Even in the dark, its scales shone a deep emerald green, and its wings wrapped protectively around a small body. Its nostrils let out steam that froze right away in the air. Next to it was a broken travel pod with its hull ripped open. The dragon raised her head, and her molten amber eyes were wide with fear and exhaustion. "Please." "My hatchling," she said, in broken Terran standard. "She can't live through this cold." Arlen saw a small shape wrapped in thermal blankets that was barely moving. Hatchlings needed at least 40 degrees to keep their metabolism going. At this temperature, the baby would go into a deadly hibernation within minutes. Leora pulled away and stepped forward without thinking. The dragon got tense and spread its wings a little, but it didn't attack. "Daddy, her baby is so cold. We need to help them." Leora's voice shook. Arlen's mind raced. He could lose his license or even go to colonial jail for keeping a dragon. But when he saw the desperate mother, memories of Celine and the nights he spent protecting Leora came rushing back. He said slowly, "I'm Arlen," and showed his hands. "This is Leora. What is your name?" The dragon thought for a moment, its head swaying. "My name is Thalara, my baby Sylvie." "We were running away to Refuge Station Vega," she said. "Our pod broke down. We almost didn't make it here." Arlen took off his hot jacket and moved closer. "Can I?" he asked Sylvie softly. Thalara let her wings relax a little after a long time. The baby was very small, and its scales shone like sunlight on water. Arlen wrapped his coat around her, which made it warmer. "We need to get her into the shuttle," he said quietly. The heating system could keep the temperature safe. Thalara tried to stand up, but her legs were weak from being cold. Leora's tiny hand slipped into Arlen's. "Do you remember what Mommy used to say? You help when someone asks for it. That's what makes us real." The words hit him like a cold wind. He looked at Leora's determined face, then Sylvie's, and finally Thalara's pleading amber eyes. "Lean on me," he said firmly. "We'll take you both to the shuttle." Thalara, who was 7 feet tall, even when she was hunched over, leaned on him a lot. Her tail left a snake-like trail in the snow. Leora ran ahead, her fingers fumbling with the access panel. "Daddy, I remember the code." The doors to the cargo bay hissed open, letting out warm air. Arlen turned the heat up to 45 degrees inside. Not good for people, but fine for dragons. He put Sylvie on a medical cot and checked her vital signs. The heartbeat is weak, but there. The core temperature is 28 degrees. He carefully made a nutrient slurry, adding minerals that are important for the growth of scales. Thalara fed Sylvie with great care, and the mother never took her eyes off her baby. "I trained to be a healer before the wars," she said softly. Arlen saw a broken refugee ID on her foreleg. It said she was a political descendant. His stomach tightened because the Draconian Empire didn't like people who left. He asked in a low voice, "Why are you really running?" Their eyes met. "Does it matter? You are the reason we are alive. It matters if hunters come looking. I also have a daughter to protect." The Coalition relief station was on Celara 12 10 hours away by shuttle. No questions asked, there is a program for resettlement. Arlen said, "I'll take the chance," Leora whispered proudly. "Daddy says strangers are just friends we haven't met yet," as she watched Sylvie. For the next hour, they turned the cargo hold into a place to live. Thalara curled up tightly, and Sylvie snuggled up next to her. Leora was sitting close by, talking about school and fake ice cream flavors. The little hatchling watched her every move with wide, golden eyes. When a security alert went off, Arlen checked the shuttle systems. Patrol sweep. He stopped breathing. "Be quiet," he said in a low voice. Thalara wrapped Sylvie in her wings, and Leora stayed quiet as well. The radio crackled, "Transport Shuttle 812. Respond for routine verification." Arlen made his voice steady. "Heating system working too hard to try to thaw out the hydraulic lines. Everything is fine." The pause was painful, and then they said, "Understood. Be safe, Commander." He let out a breath and turned to Thalara. "We're putting everything on the line for them." She tilted her head, and her amber eyes were warm. Leora said softly, "Sometimes it's the right thing to do to help someone else." Arlen could feel Selena's presence in that thought. They moved through the colony's underground transit tunnels, where they were tense but hidden. The apartment was small but cozy and private. Sylvie made a nest out of blankets. Leora had taken it upon herself to be the hatchling's guardian, talking to it nonstop while it explored. The child and the dragon got along right away. Arlen made dinner, and the small talk helped ease the tension. Thalara talked about memories of crystal forests, singing winds, and worlds that were off. The navigation array diagnostics were done by nightfall. Some parts from the junkyard in heavily guarded Sector 12 would be needed to fix the shuttle. Arlen would go by himself. Thalara's golden eyes were full of silent fear. "We stay hidden," she said. Leora, who was now sleeping next to Sylvie, had told them to leave them alone. Arlen looked out the window at the snow that was swirling around. His heart was heavy, but he was determined. "It's for them and everyone else," he said quietly. The frozen wasteland outside went on forever, but inside the apartment, a fragile warmth remained a small family, made in the cold. The first light of morning barely cut through the icy horizon of Celara Ix. Arlen woke and immediately checked on Leora. The little girl was still in a deep sleep. Sylvie nestled close by her mother, Thalara, who kept a watchful eye on everything around them. Even in rest, Thalara's presence was protective, a living shield for her daughter. Arlen quietly moved to the small kitchen module, starting the coffee capsule while his mind ran through the day's plan. Today, he would venture into Sector 12 to retrieve critical navigation components. Without them, the shuttle couldn't safely make it to the Coalition station. The risk was immense, particularly with the colony's security chief, Marcus MacDonovan, watching his every move. Mac, once a military officer, now enforcing the colony's stringent security policies, had always viewed anyone sympathetic to dragons with suspicion. Leora stirred and opened her bright, curious eyes. "Daddy, what are we doing today?" Arlen smiled, weary but resolute. "A little journey, sweetheart, but don't worry, everything will be fine." Since her mother's passing, Leora had learned to trust her father implicitly. Taking comfort in his calm voice and steady hands, Arlen prepared the shuttle, checking every panel and system. Thalara approached, her golden eyes glinting softly. "Be careful," she said, her voice quiet but firm. For them, and for those who can't protect themselves, Arlen nodded, reading both caution and trust in her gaze. "I've got it under control." The shuttle's engines hummed, and the cabin vibrated slightly under Arlen's hands. Leora pressed her small hands to the navigation display, fascinated by the blinking coordinates. While Sylvie clung lightly to Arlen's arm, the journey to Sector 12 took them over Solara, the Ninth's frozen wastelands. Turbulence and reduced visibility forced Arlen to rely on every sensor and historical map. He had made this run dozens of times, but today, the stakes were higher. One wrong move, one unnoticed patrol, and their mission could end in disaster. As the shuttle approached the massive junkyard, Arlen turned to Leora and Thelera. This is where it gets tricky. One wrong step could ruin everything. Leora nodded, gripping her harness tightly. Thelera, holding Sylvie close, emitted a low warning hiss, her way of signaling readiness. Arlen felt bolstered by their trust. The junkyard sprawled like organized chaos, heaps of metal and discarded technology forming a labyrinth. Arlen navigated the maze with practiced precision, heading straight for Section 7, Row 4, the location of the navigation array components he needed. He had retrieved parts from this spot before, but today, every shadow felt like it could conceal a threat. A familiar voice cut through the worry of his tools. "Sterling Raven," it said, cold and sharp. Arlen froze. Marcus MacDonovan, his former comrade, now a thorn in his side, approached with measured steps. Mac's eyes, sharp and calculating, never missed a detail, and his face told the story of a past hardened by battles. "What are you doing here?" Arlen asked, keeping his voice level. Mac's scarred face remained impassive, but his presence carried the weight of a warning. "Reports showed unusual heat signatures last night. Thought I'd see it for myself." Arlen forced a casual shrug. Old systems, overheating issues. Just maintenance, nothing more. But he knew Mac could see through every word. Read the tension between the lines. "I think you're up to something, Raven," Mac said, stepping closer. "Not sure what yet, but I'm watching." Then he paused at the doorway. "Say hi to that little girl of yours. Be a shame if anything disrupted her." Nice, safe life. The threat was unmistakable. Arlen clenched his jaw, but forced himself to stay calm. After Mac left, he worked faster, assembling the components. Leora watched with wide eyes but did not panic. Sylvie chirped softly, sensing the rising tension. And Thelera's steady presence reminded him that they had allies beyond the human realm. Finally, the shuttle was ready. As they lifted off, the icy winds of Solara X's surface lashed against the hull. But Arlen kept the shuttle steady, navigating past surveillance patrols and automated defenses. One plasma warning shot seared past the shuttle, missing by meters. "Warning shot," Arlen muttered. "Next one won't be." He dove low, using abandoned structures as cover. In the cargo hold, Sylvie's frightened chirps mingled with Leora's reassurances. Arlen pushed the engines harder. Eyes flicking between sensors, the navigation console, and the external cameras, breaking through the colony's atmospheric shield, they entered the frozen wasteland beyond. The security vehicles could not follow. They were not equipped for the extreme conditions. Arlen knew, however, that the threat wasn't over. Mac would alert orbital stations and other colonies if needed. They had to reach Coalition Station Harmony fast. Plotting the jump coordinates, Arlen felt a rush of adrenaline. The damaged navigation array protested under the strain, but held firm. "Can we make it?" Thelera asked, eyes on the console, Sylvie clinging to her. "We'll make it," Arlen replied, determination ringing in his voice. "I've flown worse ships through worse situations." When Leora asked when, he gave a small grin. "Well, never. But there's a first time for everything." Thelera chuckled, a rumbling warm sound. Leora looked between them. Daddy's either very brave or very foolish. Arlen smiled at her, a mixture of pride and worry. The jump drive engaged, reality bending as hyperspace swallowed the shuttle. The vessel shuddered under the strain of the damaged components, but it held. 4 hours later, they dropped back into normal space near Coalition Station Harmony, a vast structure orbiting in silent majesty. Transport Shuttle 779. "This is Coalition Station Harmony." "State your business," the comm crackled. Relief washed over Arlen. "Harmony Control, this is 779 requesting emergency docking. We have refugees seeking asylum." After a tense pause, 779, "You are cleared for docking Bay 12. Medical and refugee services will meet you there." Docking complete. Arlen finally exhaled. Hours of paperwork, medical checks, and interviews blurred together. The coalition took asylum claims seriously, and Thalera's case was straightforward a political dissenter, fleeing persecution. With a hatchling to protect, later, Arlen found Thalara and Sylvie in their temporary quarters, clean and warm. They're placing us on Haven Colony, Thalara said, golden eyes softening. It's a mixed-species settlement. Sylvie will grow up around humans, dragons, and others. She won't know the hatred I grew up with. Arlen watched Leora play with Sylvie, the warmth of their laughter grounding him. No debt, he said when Thalara expressed gratitude. Just pass it on someday. Help someone when they need it. Days later, as Arlen prepared his coalition shuttle for its first run, Leora ran up excitedly. Daddy, guess what? What, sweetheart? Haven Colony is on your route. We can visit them. Arlen felt warmth bloom in his chest. A note tucked into his pilot seat caught his attention. Written in careful script. Sterling, Sylvie wanted you to have this. Dragons never forget a debt, but more importantly, we never forget a friend. May your skies be clear and your landing soft. K inside was a scale deep sapphire, shimmering in the light. Not one of Sylvie's small ones, but Thalera's a gift of family and trust. Daddy, are you crying? Leora asked. Just space dust, he said, smiling through his emotions as they lifted off, heading into hyperspace toward warmer skies and new beginnings. Arlen thought of that cold night when everything had changed. One act of compassion, one child's insistence on helping, had altered the course of 4 lives. And sometimes, saving someone else was really about saving yourself. The early morning light on Haven Colony was weak and came through the clear dome that protected the settlement from the harsh winds of the barren planet outside. Arlen stood on the observation deck of the shuttle bay and watched as ships of all shapes and sizes came and went from the docking rings. The sight made him think about how big the universe is and how many different lives and civilizations are living together in fragile harmony. Thalara and Sylvie were still sleeping because they were tired from the long trip. On the other hand, Leora was already up, and her little feet were pattering around the quarters as she got ready for the day with excitement. Come on, Daddy! We need to see the gardens and the places where the animals eat. Arlen smiled and ran his hand through his hair. Her endless energy was contagious, and it reminded him of why he had chosen this path and why it had been worth it to risk everything. The communal dining area had a simple breakfast. There were different species at the tables, and they spoke in a dozen different languages, but there was a common rhythm and purpose to the morning. Leora wanted to sit with a small group of young human and dragon children. Arlen and Thalara watched and talked quietly over nutrient capsules and fake coffee. Thalara's golden eyes looked around the room. They'll be safe here, she said. Sylvie, who was snuggled up next to her, chirped softly, sensing the mother's cautious hope. That's what I hope, Arlen said. But it's a new place, and the coalition keeps track of things. It's better than hiding in the shadows, but people will still look at it. The shuttle's communication panel made a soft chime. Arlen came closer, his fingers moving quickly over the console. A holographic screen showed an officer with a serious look on his face. Commander Raven, welcome to Haven Colony. Officer said, we have a problem that needs to be fixed right away. Transport freighter that was carrying important supplies has gone offline. It was last seen in the asteroid belt to the north. Arlen's jaw got tight. What kind of supplies? He asked as he walked toward the flight deck. Food and medical supplies. Time is very important. The crew of the freighter could still be alive if we act quickly, the officer said. The coalition needs your help to get the ship back. Thalara moved closer, and Sylvie curled up against her arm. You can't go alone, she said in a soft voice that was both worried and commanding. We've come this far together. Don't put yourself in danger now. Arlen looked at her, and her eyes showed both fear and trust. He knew she was correct. He couldn't do this by himself, not when Leora and Sylvie needed him. He said, we go together, you, me, Leora, and Sylvie. Thalara's lips turned into a rare, warm smile. The shuttle, which was small but could do a lot of things, was ready in less than an hour. Once more, Arlen looked at the navigation array. It had been fixed up and patched, but the parts were so fragile that even the smallest mistake could lead to disaster. Leora watched with wide eyes, holding on to a small stuffed animal she wouldn't let go of, while Sylvie chirped and squirmed in Thalara's arms. As they took off, The atmosphere of Haven Colony changed behind them, and the planet's pale surface turned into the black void of space. The console showed the last coordinates for the freighter's transmission. The asteroid belt was ahead, a thick maze of ice and rock that needed careful navigation. Arlen changed the shuttle's course and said, "Hold on tight. Everyone, we're going to need all of our attention." As the shuttle moved through the field, its engines hummed as they avoided sharp rocks and other debris. Thalara's tail moved around nervously, and Sylvie made soft, warning sounds. Leora pushed herself into the seatbelt, her eyes wide but determined. A sudden alert went off on the console halfway through the belt. Proximity breach. A ship that is not known has been found. Arlen's heart raced. Pirates were common in these areas, especially near valuable cargo. The unidentified ship came closer on purpose, and you could see weapons mounted on its hull. "Put up the shields." Arlen yelled and flipped switches to turn on the emergency energy matrix. Thalara's wings opened up, and her muscles tensed as she got ready to defend herself. Sylvie let out a sharp warning trill, and Leora held onto her father's arm. Her face showed a hint of excitement instead of fear. The enemy ship called out to them. A harsh, metallic voice said, "Transport vessel, give up your cargo or be destroyed." Arlen's jaw tightened. He said, "Not happening." He changed the shuttle's path so that it dove toward a narrow passage between two huge asteroids. The pirate ship chased after them, shooting energy bolts that burned through the void and missed by only a few meters. Arlen moved skillfully, using the asteroid field as a shield. Thalara joined in, and her dragon senses and speed let them predict and avoid attacks with amazing accuracy. Sylvie chirped her approval as she watched the action from her perch. Finally, they got to the freighter, which was damaged but still floating silently among the rocks. Arlen looked at the hull. "We need to quickly dock it and make it stable." "You can help me with the sensors, Leora." Her eyes lit up with determination. "Yes, Daddy." She quickly took the interface and learned a lot from him. Thalara landed on the hull and used her claws to hold on while she connected the stabilization lines. Sylvie followed, small but helpful in her own way. The teamwork was perfect, with human creativity and dragon instincts coming together to form one powerful force. Within a few tense minutes, they had taken control of the freighter. Arlen got into the cargo bay to check that the medical supplies and food were still there. "We're fine," he said. "Let's get out of here before our friends come back." The shuttle smoothly came loose, rose above the asteroid belt, and headed back to Haven Colony. The ride back was quieter as the adrenaline slowly wore off. Leora leaned against her father, tired but proud. Sylvie softly chirped and snuggled up to Thalara. Arlen took a moment to breathe and remember why he had chosen this life. Moments like these, full of danger, trust, and courage. When they got back, Coalition officials met with them right away. Their questions were quick but grateful. The crew of the freighter was safe, and so were the supplies. Arlen got a nod of approval, which was a silent way of saying that he was skilled, brave, and dedicated. "You did well," Thalara whispered in his ear. He nodded, knowing that the safety and trust of the people he loved were more important than any awards he might win. Later, when things were quiet in their room, Leora climbed into her father's lap. "Can we do that again tomorrow, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes shining. Arlen smiled and pushed her hair back. "Maybe, honey. But for now, take a break. We've worked hard for it." Sylvie chirped in agreement and curled up next to them in a warm ball. As Haven Colony silently turned below, Arlen looked out the viewport and saw stars streaking by. The universe was big, unpredictable, and often dangerous. But in these brief moments of bravery and togetherness, it felt like home. He silently promised that he would protect his family, their new friends, and the fragile hope that kindness, courage, and trust could still thrive among the stars, no matter what challenges lay ahead. And with that, for the first time in days, Arlen let himself close his eyes. He felt the weight of his responsibilities lift a little, and the quiet promise of tomorrow pushed him forward. The morning on Haven Colony came with a soft amber light that shone through the clear domes that were scattered throughout the settlement. Arlen and Thalara walked through the busy hallways of the station. Leora skipped ahead, her laughter mixing with the sound of machines and the chatter of different species. After the chaos of their recent escape, the morning routine was strangely comforting, a rhythm that let them catch their breath, even if only for a moment. "Papa, we need to see the new gardens." Leora yelled and pulled on Arlen's sleeve. I heard there are plants from at least 10 different worlds. Arlen smiled and picked her up. Sylvie chirped in agreement and flew along, her small wings catching the light. Thalara stayed close behind, watching over them both. The gardens were a huge mix of ecosystems, with each dome made for a certain climate and type of plant. Under fake sunlight, strange plants sparkled, and tiny animals ran around in the roots and branches. Leora ran from one display to the next, pointing out plants she didn't know and asking Arlen questions he couldn't always answer. Thalara said, "This one is called a shimmer bloom," and she gently touched the glowing flower with her claws. "It takes in energy from its surrounding. Isn't it interesting?" Leora's eyes got bigger. She whispered, "It's like magic." Arlen laughed. "Sometimes science and magic look the same to young eyes," he said, watching his daughter smile. Arlen's communication panel buzzed urgently as they went deeper into the gardens. He looked at it, and his face became hard. He said, "We've got a problem." The display showed an alert from the Coalition network. There was a signal breach near the outer docking rings, and an unauthorized ship was getting closer. There was a twitch in Thalara's wings. "Another threat?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. Arlen nodded, already thinking about what could happen. "It looks like we're not out of danger yet. We need to stop it before it gets to places where people live." Leora held onto his arm. "Can we help?" she asked, her voice full of fear and curiosity. Arlen thought for a moment, but then smiled. "You can watch, you will learn, and I promise you will be safe." Sylvie chirped as if she agreed with the choice, and Thalara's eyes softened with a mix of pride and caution. They rushed back to the shuttle bay, where the small transport was ready and armed. Arlen worked with Coalition traffic control to get updates as the unknown ship got closer. It had an unusual, angular design and energy readings that showed it could go faster and have more powerful weapons than normal models. Arlen said, "We'll have to be careful," as he took the pilot's seat. "Thalara, you're on defense. Leora, keep your seatbelt on. Sylvie, stay close." The engines roared to life, and the shuttle took off, smoothly rising into space. The ship came into view and spun a little as it made its way through the outer rings. Arlen's mind was racing with choices. "I'm not taking any chances," he said under his breath as he changed course. The shuttle avoided automated mining drones and debris, threading the needle between dangers. Thalara's senses sharpened, picking up on energy signatures that revealed the ship's plans. The ship suddenly sped up and headed straight for the station. The Coalition defense ships tried to stop the attack, but they had to deal with a lot of transport and maintenance ships, which slowed them down. Arlen said under his breath, "We have to take care of this ourselves," as he watched the threat get closer. Thalara opened her wings and rose slightly above the shuttle, her scales shining in the light that bounced off of them. She looked over the enemy ship and found its weak spots. "Hit the power nodes," she told him. "Stop propulsion without causing major damage. We can't risk hurting other people." Arlen nodded and moved his fingers over the controls, aiming at the nodes. Energy pulses shot out of the shuttle and hit the enemy hull perfectly, making sparks and shaking it. The ship stopped working and slowed down as systems started to fail. He thought the crew inside must have been skilled, but not enough to match the combination of human creativity and dragon accuracy. The enemy ship suddenly fired an electromagnetic pulse that shook the shuttle's systems. Navigation lights blinked and alarms went off. "Get stable," Arlen yelled. Thalara lunged forward and used her energy manipulation to strengthen the shields, taking the full force of the pulse. Sylvie chirped sharply, giving Arlen the information he needed to adjust the shuttle's course while it was in flight. The fight went on with tense precision, with each move carefully planned to protect the station and force the enemy ship to surrender. Leora held on to her father with wide eyes, but she wasn't scared. She knew, in her own small way, that sometimes being brave meant standing up to danger. In the end, the other ship was disabled and was spinning harmlessly in space. Coalition troops moved in to protect it. Arlen let out a breath and rubbed his temples. He said, "That's enough excitement for one day." Thalara sat next to him. Her wings folded as she looked at him with pride and relief. When the shuttle got back to Haven Colony, Coalition officers and curious onlookers were waiting for it. Leora jumped out of the shuttle and ran back to the gardens, with Sylvie flying next to her and chirping excitedly. Thalara stayed close to Arlen and kept her eyes on the shuttle's damaged hull. "You did well," she said in a soft voice. Arlen nodded, but his thoughts were already changing. He said to himself, "This place is supposed to be safe, and yet threats still make their way here. We need stronger defenses and better rules. This can't become a habit for me." Thalara put a reassuring claw on his shoulder. "You've always been good at dealing with danger. You are lucky to be in Haven Colony." The domes turned deep purple and gold as night fell. Arlen, Thalara, and Leora sat down for a quiet dinner. Sylvie chirped happily from her spot on the table and pushed crumbs toward the baby dragon. They told each other stories about their day. Leora talked about her favorite plants, and Arlen talked about the strategic moves that had saved the station. Later, when it was dark, Arlen went back to the observation deck to look at the stars. The huge dark space was full of possibilities, dangers, and amazing things. He thought about Catherine, the choices that had brought him here, and the family he was now protecting. Every day was a test of bravery, intelligence, and heart. Thalara joined him without saying a word, her eyes scanning the horizon. She said, "Tomorrow will bring new problems." Arlen smiled a little. "Yes, but we're ready, all together." Sylvie chirped in agreement, and Leora's voice could be heard faintly from her room, reminding them that even when things were unclear, they were still happy. Arlen knew that life in Haven Colony would always be hard. The universe was big, often dangerous, and full of surprises. He found hope in the quiet strength of family and the bond of trust and loyalty. Hope that even in the darkest parts of space, love, kindness, and bravery could show the way. As the stars twinkled above and bounced off the domed roofs of the settlement, Arlen made a promise to himself. He would protect this new life, this fragile happiness with everything he had, no matter what threats came his way or what challenges lay ahead, because there were times when just surviving wasn't enough. Sometimes it was about making a future worth fighting for. The next morning was colder than expected, and frost covered the outside of Haven Colony. Arlen woke up to the soft hum of the station's systems and Leora's excited chatter coming from her room as she got ready for another day of exploring. Sylvie flew to his shoulder and chirped loudly, as if to tell him to hurry up. "Is it morning already?" Arlen grumbled as he stretched. Thalara had already left to watch over the station's defensive drills so that the recent breach wouldn't happen again. There was a sense of cautious watchfulness in the air, a reminder that danger could come out of nowhere, even in a place that was supposed to be safe. After a quick breakfast, Arlen went over the logs from the previous night's incident while gathering his notes and data pads. He saw patterns in the movements of the unknown ship, strange energy signatures, and possible weaknesses. He said softly, "We need to be ready for anything," more to himself than anyone else. Leora jumped over and pulled him toward the docking bay. "Come on, Dad. Varen Prime has sent a new shipment. People say it has rare minerals and strange animals." Arlen couldn't help but feel excited when she spoke. Okay, we'll look," he said with a smile. Sylvie chirped in agreement, and Thalara, who had just gotten there, nodded with a small smile. There was a lot going on in the docking bay. Different species worked together to unload cargo, each one moving with skill and precision. Arlen led Leora to the observation deck, where they could see crates being scanned, some being opened for inspection, and others being carefully secured. There was a strange crate among the cargo that caught Leora's eye. It was a clear box with small, glowing creatures inside that looked like liquid light and moved as if they were alive but were not. "What are they?" Leora asked, her eyes wide. Arlen bent down a little to her level. He said, "Energy sprites. They're safe if you know how to handle them, but they are sensitive to feelings. Stay calm and focused." Thalara also looked at the crate for a long time, knowing that these beings could be useful in both science and strategy. The comm panel beeped urgently while they were watching. Arlen replied, and his face got tense. "Arlen Raven," he said, his voice steady. The display showed an alert from Coalition intelligence, a distress signal from a colony close by on the edge of the sector. The report was short but scary. A biohazard outbreak, with automated systems saying that buildings were unstable and that there were many deaths. Thalara's wings stood up, she said firmly. "We can't ignore it. People could die if this is a natural disaster." Or sabotage, Arlen nodded, and started to figure out how to make it work. "We'll take the shuttle." Few crew members, quick response. "Leora, you need to stay here with Sylvie in charge. This is bad." Leora pouted, but understood and trusted her father's decision. The shuttle bay cleared out quickly, and Arlen, Thalara, and a small response team got ready to leave. When the engine started, the station's external sensors tracked the coordinates and sent live data to Arlen's navigation system. The cold emptiness of space stretched out in front of them, with faint glimmers of distant colonies and bits of junk from old mining operations scattered around. When they got to the colony, things were worse than they had thought. There was smoke and debris in the air, and the biohazard alarms made their instruments pulse in a staccato pattern. Arlen moved the shuttle close to the main landing platform, looking for stable areas to send ground teams to. "An initial scan shows that life signs are mostly in the central dome," Arlen said. 40% of the structure is still strong. To get survivors out safely, we'll need to be exact." Thalara used her energy manipulation to make shields around the shuttle's descent path that absorbed debris and made weak surfaces more stable. "We'll go in pairs." "Minimal exposure," she told them. The team got off the ship and moved slowly. Arlen led the way, carefully walking over broken sidewalks and open pipes. The smell of burnt metal mixed with the biohazard's fake chemicals, which hurt their noses. Thalara hovered nearby, her wings beating quietly, ready to step in if any building fell. They found the first group of survivors in the central dome, engineers and medical workers who were trapped under the rubble, scared but alive. Arlen and Thalara worked together to carefully pull the survivors out, lifting heavy panels and directing them into temporary containment pods on the shuttle. Arlen said, "Almost done," and sweat started to form on his forehead. The last person to live was an older scientist who was obviously in shock. "Sir, the containment protocols. They only partially worked," he said in a hoarse voice. "We need to stabilize the environment, or the biohazard could change quickly." Thalara stepped forward, her claws carefully moving the containment field. Energy spread out, forming a barrier that kept the most unstable particles from moving. Arlen kept an eye on the readings and let out a sigh of relief when things settled down. "Good job. That should work until the full decontamination teams get there." A tremor shook the dome all of a sudden, making everyone hold on to the falling debris. Arlen's sensors picked up on a problem with the support beam next to it. "Now move," he yelled. As the team ran to the shuttle, Thalara used her strength and energy control to hold up parts that were falling down, giving them a few extra seconds. The shuttle took off just as the dome behind them started to fall apart. Dust and sparks filled the space. Leora's voice on the radio sounded worried. "Are you all right?" Arlen tapped the comm panel and said, "We're fine. Everyone who lived through it is accounted for." On our way back, it was a tense ride home. The personnel who were taken out were stabilized as much as possible, and Arlen kept an eye on all the shuttle's systems, knowing that the biohazard's instability could make their environment unsafe. Thalara stayed alert, paying attention to both the passengers' mental states and the changes in energy. The shuttle docked at Haven Colony, and the survivors were taken to a medical quarantine area. Scientists and doctors from the Coalition started to fully clean and study the area. Arlen and Thalara stayed in the shuttle bay to catch their breath. "You did well," Thalara said softly, looking Arlen in the eye. "You always handle things perfectly." Arlen shook his head. "We got through it. It was teamwork. But these things, they make me remember how weak even the safest places are." Leora ran up and hugged her dad's leg. She yelled, "Daddy, you saved them. Because of you, they're safe." Arlen knelt down to her level and stroked her hair. "Yes, we all did, sweetheart. Everyone had a role to play." Sylvie chirped in agreement and flew around the three of them. As the sun set over the domes of Haven Colony that night, Arlen thought about what had happened that day. The universe was full of surprises, danger, and a lack of mercy. But it was also full of brave moments, kind acts, and the quiet strength of people who were willing to fight for others. Thalara joined him on the observation deck again, she said. "Tomorrow might bring more problems, but we've shown that we can deal with them." Arlen nodded and looked up at the stars. "Yes, and as long as we stick together, we'll be able to handle them all. We now live in Haven Colony, and it's worth keeping safe." The stars above shone, and the colonies far away twinkled like promises that could break. Arlen understood something important. Even in a vast, cold universe, hope persisted. This was true in their new life, where they were safe and surrounded by trust and loyalty. The light would never go out as long as there were people who were willing to act. The next day started with a brittle quiet, a calm that wasn't what it seemed to be over Haven Colony. When Arlen woke up, he heard the low hum of the station's environmental regulators. Sylvie was sitting on the windowsill, staring at the stars with her usual intensity. Leora had been up for an hour already, sketching pictures of strange animals from the last shipment. Her small hands moved with great care over the datapad. Arlen rubbed his temples and stretched. The emergency from the day before had left him physically fine but mentally on edge. The quick rescue of survivors and the almost disastrous failure of containment left behind, worries that wouldn't go away. Thalara's presence helped him calm down. Her calm energy balanced out his racing thoughts. They had a quiet breakfast together in their small space. Leora talked a lot about the new species she wanted to study, and Sylvie chimed in with what sounded like strong agreement. Arlen tried to keep his mind on the food in front of him, but he couldn't shake the knot of worry in his chest. The Coalition's alerts said that there had been more strange things happening in the sector, like changes in energy levels, the sudden disappearance of small outposts, and changes in colony activity that couldn't be explained. None of them were immediate threats, but the pattern made it seem like something bigger was coming. The comm panel's sharp beep broke the morning's peace. Arlen tapped the screen. He said, Arlen Raven. The screen showed a message from Coalition Command that was encrypted. The subject line said, Operational Advisory Immediate, Coordination Required. Arlen's forehead creased. He opened the safe channel. Command, this is Raven. Go ahead, a voice that was sharp answered. We need your help, Raven. A research convoy on its way to the Frost Expanse has gone dark. They had important experimental tools with them, like energy modulators and biological samples that were needed for a number of ongoing studies. You are the best person to look into this because you know the area well and have worked on emergency responses before. Thalara leaned in closer, her wings tense. Frost Expanse. That's not safe. Bad weather, strange magnetic fields, and not much support infrastructure. Arlen's jaw got tight. I know, but if the convoy is in danger, the equipment and people are at too much risk to ignore. We want a small crew and a quick response. Leora frowned. Are you leaving again? Arlen knelt down next to her. Just for a little while, you'll be safe, because Sylvie will stay with you. The shuttle was ready by mid-morning. Arlen checked the navigation arrays, energy shields, and propulsion systems again. Thalara ran tests on the stabilizers and made small changes to them to make up for the very bad conditions they would face. As Arlen typed in the coordinates for the Frost Expanse, Sylvie sat on the dashboard and chattered warnings. The trip was stressful. As hyperspace displacement moved them across light years of cold emptiness, the stars streaked past the viewport. Arlen checked each system over and over again, looking for anything out of the ordinary. Thalara stayed quiet, her eyes closing every now and then as she tuned into the subtle energy flows around them. As they got closer to the expanse, the shuttle's sensors picked up weak distress beacons coming from broken places along the convoy's planned route. They're all over the place, Arlen said, his voice tight. The storm must have come out of nowhere. Thalara's wings touched the console. We need to be careful. If the shuttle makes one wrong move, it could be lost. The Frost Expanse was a strange, dangerous place, with storms of energy and ice shards floating around. It was hard to see, and the magnetic interference messed up most automated systems. Arlen was able to navigate well because he had done so many missions before. He relied on his gut and made small adjustments. The shuttle shook as charged particles hit the hull, sending electrical interference through the cabin. Sensors picked up the first convoy site, a small research pod that was partially buried in a drifting ice field. There were faint but clear signs of life. Deploying rescue drone, Arlen said, and started the launch sequence. The drone moved with mechanical grace, cutting through the rough air to get to the pod. Arlen and Thalara kept an eye on its progress, making changes for winds and power outages. The drone's feed showed that things were crazy inside the pod. Things had fallen over, and a few researchers were stuck under boxes of supplies. Their biosuits had small holes in them that let in the extreme cold. Arlen's hands moved quickly over the console, working with Thalara to stabilize the environment from a distance. using drones and energy shields. The team helped each researcher get to safety by moving debris and strengthening weak spots in the structure. Arlen picked up another signal deeper into the expanse after the first group was safe. This site looked like it had been hit harder, he mumbled. This one looks like it was done on purpose. The energy patterns around the pod made it look like someone was trying to destroy it. Thalara's wings stood up. Someone wants that gear. We need to hurry before they attack again. They made it to the second pod by moving through drifting ice and electromagnetic waves. Inside, things were even worse. Equipment was broken. Biological samples were ruined. And 2 researchers were unconscious from being exposed. Arlen and Thalara worked together to stabilize the pod, get the survivors out, and protect the rest of the samples. Arlen saw small signs of tampering, like small devices that were put there on purpose to look like natural failures. Arlen said with a grim look, "Sabotage confirmed." Thalara nodded. "Whoever did this is good at what they do and is hiding their tracks well. We need to tell Command about this right away, but first we need to make sure everyone is safe." As they got ready to go back, the shuttle's hold was almost full. Arlen set a course back to Haven Colony, but the Expanse still had more tests for them. Sudden turbulence shook the shuttle, and the hull creaked under the pressure. Instruments blinked. Arlen said, "Get ready for impact." Thalara's energy shields flared up and took the brunt of the storm's rage. The shuttle creaked but stayed together as it slowly made its way through the chaos. Hours later, the outline of Haven Colony appeared on the horizon. It was a welcome sight after the long, hard trip. Arlen made a careful landing, and medical teams rushed to help the survivors. Leora Sylvie and a small group of coalition workers met them at the docking bay. Leora's eyes got bigger when she saw that her father was okay. "You did it," she shouted as she ran to hug him. Arlen smiled a little. "We all did it," he said, pointing to Thalara. Working together, Thalara's eyes softened, which was a rare sign of warmth. "You did a great job," she said softly. The rest of the day was spent writing down what happened, making sure that all evidence of sabotage was kept, and starting to fix broken equipment. Arlen looked over the data carefully, looking for patterns in the strange energy readings and clues about who might be behind the attacks. He knew that the people who did it were brave, smart, and able to cause more trouble, so Coalition intelligence would follow up. That night, Arlen stood on the observation deck, while Sylvie sat quietly next to him. Leora had been asleep for a long time, dreaming of amazing adventures. Thalara joined him, and her presence was quiet but comforting. "Do you think this will go on?" Arlen asked, looking at the endless stars outside the station. "It might," Thalara said, "but Haven Colony has you. You have shown that you can deal with the unexpected. And you're not the only one." Arlen nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the comfort of having trusted friends around. The universe was unpredictable and often dangerous, but as long as there were people willing to act with honesty and bravery, there was hope. And in the calm, shining space around them, that hope was enough to keep them going. The next morning, Haven Colony was strangely quiet. Everyone who had been on the previous missions, which were full of close calls and tense rescues, had been affected in some way, but they had also formed bonds that were stronger than any fear. Arlen stood in the docking bay, watching the morning sun shine off the metal surfaces and bounce off the floors in a rainbow of colors. The shuttle engines were quiet and humming a low, steady sound that said it was ready. Leora ran up to him, holding her sketches and datapad. Dad, we got new coordinates for exploratory surveys in areas that weren't on any maps. Some of them are near the energy anomalies you were looking into." Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and she seemed innocent but also wise, which made Arlen smile. "We'll need to make plans carefully, sweetheart," he said. "But yes, it seems like our next adventure is already knocking on the door." Thalara came up quietly, and her presence was as comforting as always. "I've looked over the strange things," she said in a low but sure voice. "There's a pattern forming separate energy pockets that appear and disappear, almost as if they're responding to something. Smart? You mean that someone is making them?" Thalara's golden eyes looked into his, maybe, or something that acts like it's smart. In either case, it's worth looking into. The shuttle is fixed and the crew is ready. This could be our most important mission so far. The stars turned into long white and blue streaks as the shuttle took off and left the colony behind. The vastness of space swallowed them up in a silent embrace. Arlen Eastley took the controls and expertly steered the ship, while Thalara kept an eye on every change in energy, her instincts working with the shuttle's instruments. Leora's small body was strapped into the observation area, and her eyes were wide as she traced the patterns on the screens. A sudden spike on the energy scanners woke them up hours into the trip. Arlen's hands moved quickly over the controls to avoid turbulence caused by a rift in space. He looked at Thalara and said, "I've never seen anything like this. It's like the space itself is alive and reacting to something we can't see." Thalara's wings shook a little, and energy flowed along their edges. Whatever it is, it's huge and can change. We need to be careful. As they got closer to the epicenter, the shuttle's hull shook. Pieces of old ships and trash floated eerily in the void, left behind by explorers who had gotten too close. Arlen's heart raced. The stakes were higher than ever. If they made a mistake, the shuttle could be destroyed. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a thrill. A rush that came from the chance of finding something new, not from being in danger. A sudden flash of light lit up the vastness ahead. It was a huge building, partially covered in shimmering energy fields. It was clearly very old, but more advanced than any coalition or other known technology. "By the stars," Arlen said quietly. This is amazing," Leora gasped next to him. "It's so pretty." Thalara's face was blank, but her body was tense, ready for any sign of danger. They docked at an outside bay made for connecting with unknown structures, being careful not to set off any defenses. When the airlock opened, it made a hissing sound and revealed a maze of hallways made of a material that seemed to change slightly as they looked at it. Light came from veins in the walls that were embedded and pulsed in time with the music. Thalara's senses were on edge. There was life here, but not the kind they were used to. They moved slowly, and each step echoed through the big rooms. Arlen had a portable scanner that he used to look at the energy signatures of the building. There were signs of patterns, mathematical sequences mixed with organic shapes, which made it look like the structure was a mix of machine and life. "It's alive," he said softly. "Or it thinks it is," Thalara agreed. "Some old intelligence, maybe from a civilization we've never met before. We need to write down everything, but we also need to be on the lookout." They got to a central room where a huge orb hung in the air and hummed with power. Arlen came closer and looked at its energy. "This could make the whole area more stable or less stable," he said. Leora's soft voice spoke up. "Dad, it feels like it's breathing." Thalara put a hand on the orb and spread her wings to protect it. The energy pulsed back, almost as if it recognized them. All of a sudden, the floor shook violently. What are the security measures? Or a response to their invasion? Holographic projections of star maps, unknown systems, and events that seemed to last for thousands of years appeared on panels along the walls. Arlen moved closer and drew a line on one of the projections. This is knowledge. More knowledge than we could have ever imagined. A voice that was both melodic and commanding filled the room. "Travelers? Seekers? Why do you break the silence?" Thalara's eyes got smaller. "We don't want to hurt you. We want to understand so we don't hurt others." The orb got brighter. "Recognized intent. Noted courage. But the universe is in balance. ... Every choice has a result." Arlen and Thalara looked at each other. It was clear what they had to do. They could get the knowledge and power here, but they would have to take on responsibility and risk. Leora moved closer, and her small hand brushed the edge of the orb. The building responded gently, recognizing that the child was innocent. Arlen felt hopeful. Maybe the universe wasn't completely uncaring. They were ready to leave after hours of careful study and writing. The energy of the structure changed slightly, making a safe way out. Arlen drove the shuttle back through the maze of hallways, feeling the weight of what they had seen and how it could affect all life. Thalara stayed alert to make sure that no leftover energy got in the way of their path. As they came out into the open, they could see Haven Colony shining in the distance, a sign of home and safety. For the first time in days, Arlen was able to breathe freely. Leora squeezed his hand. "We did it. We saw it all," she yelled, her voice full of awe. "And we made it." There were reports and debriefings back at the colony. The information they had collected was priceless. It was a guide to understanding old energy systems and possible threats. Coalition Command praised their work, noting not only their survival skills but also the wisdom and restraint they had shown. Arlen looked at the stars from the observation deck that night. Leora was tired but happy as she slept next to them. She dreamed of stars and strange worlds. Thalara sat quietly, her eyes shining like stars. For a moment, everything was still. The universe around them was huge and full of unknowns and possibilities. Arlen thought about the journey, the missions, the close calls, the wins, and the friendships that grew stronger in tough times. The universe was huge, sometimes scary, and full of amazing things that were waiting for people who were brave enough to explore it. He thought about the lives that had been saved, the bonds that had been strengthened, and the hope that kindness, courage, and curiosity could make the future better, even in the darkest places. He leaned back and looked at the stars. He said in a low voice, "This is just the beginning." Thalara's soft hum said yes to him. Leora moved and mumbled in her sleep. The universe stretched out in front of them, full of promise, adventure, and the quiet truth that every choice and action could change the course of time and space. The adventure was just starting for Arlen, Thalara, and Leora. Together, they would face the cosmos, its wonders, dangers, and unknown secrets, ready to find their place among the stars. Guided by bravery, curiosity, and the strong ties of family and friendship, the shuttle engines hummed, ready for the next trip. The stars were infinite and welcoming,